This is our third week in the book, The Song of Songs. When you are in the middle of an SOS in life, and if you don't know what an SOS is, it's a cry for help. This is the book that was written to give you the wisdom to overcome. But not just to overcome by your own strength, your own might, and your own power, but by learning that you overcome by drawing close and staying close to the lover of your soul, which is Jesus Christ. Because if you're honest with yourself, when you're going through challenging times, an SOS in life, oftentimes you will do just the opposite of what God desires you to do, and you will pull away rather than draw close to. You'll quit coming to church because of something that's going on in your life. You'll quit hanging out with other Christians. You'll quit doing the disciplines of the faith. You just kind of let those things go rather than draw closer to. And this book is all about the continued pursuit of a relationship with our King and our Savior. It's one of the Old Testament books that are known as the books of wisdom, written as a poem. It's actually a song, and so it's called the Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon, but it's really a love song. So it's the love song of all love songs. And here's the deal. If you're reading this like I've asked you to so that you can study while I study and we all learn and grow together so that you learn how to feed yourselves, you'll understand that the song is poetic. And anytime something is poetic, it's often left open for interpretation. When you read this and you go through this, you'll see there's a lot of different ways to often interpret what's being said. However, it should all be within the written word of God. What this really does is it shows us the purest form of love between a husband and a wife. And yet it is an allegory about Christ and the church, about Jesus and you. And it is meant to draw us into the understanding of the bridal paradigm, God's perfect love for you and I. The great Charles Spurgeon, some of you may have heard his name or quotes before. He was known as the Prince of Preachers in the late 1800s, a very well-respected man of God. And he had this to say about the Song of Songs. He wrote, "Certain divines have doubted the inspiration of Solomon's song. Others have conceived it to be nothing more than a specimen of ancient love songs. And some have been afraid to preach from it because of its highly poetical character. The true reason for all this avoidance of one of the most heavenly portions of God's word lies in the fact that the spirit of the song is not easily attained. Its music belongs to the higher spiritual life and has no charm in it for unspiritual ears. The song occupies a sacred enclosure into which none may enter unprepared. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place wherein thou standest is holy ground," is the warning voice from its secret tabernacles. The historical books I may compare to the outer courts of the temple. The Gospels, the Epistles, and the Psalms bring us into the holy place of the court of the priests. But the Song of Solomon is the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, before which the veil still hangs to many an untaught believer. It is not all the saints who can enter here, for they have not yet attained unto the holy confidence of faith and that exceedingly familiarity of love which will permit them to commune in conjugal love with the great bridegroom. Spurgeon's words themselves are almost poetic in their description of this book, of this song, describing the challenge for Christians. You may have accepted Christ, but to really get into a book like this, you have to open up your heart and be willing to accept where God really wants you to grow in relationship with Him. It's a challenging thought to move from, yeah, I believe in God, to I am so in love with Him, I would give all that I am for Him. That He is the lover of my soul, and yet that's where God wants you to be with His one first great commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. It's meant to challenge our hearts to pursue and grow closer in our personal relationship with the living God. To move beyond just a head knowledge into a being able to accept the Lord with all of our heart. That He is real. That I know that He's real without a shadow of a doubt. And He's not just real because of what I hear or what I've read or what people have told me, but because I know He is real. And so as we dive further into this, I want to take us back just a little bit, not to recap, but to bring out a little bit more of something that we talked about where we left off 2 weeks ago. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 5 through 6. I'm reading from the New King James Version. If you have your Bible, you can turn there. If not, it'll be on the overhead. This is the setting. It's the background for this whole book. These verses right here kind of set the story in its place from where it takes off. These are the words of what is known as the Shulamite, the bride, the woman that's in love with her beloved, the groom, which we believe to be King Solomon. And she says in these verses that we can get her background from, she says, I am dark, but lovely. O daughters of Jerusalem. The daughters of Jerusalem represent immature believers in the church. People who believe, but they haven't grown in their faith yet. She says, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon, do not look upon me because I am dark. Because the sun has tanned me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. We touched on these scriptures last time to kind of set the backstory of a woman who struggled with the battle of not enough. And you can look at this story, I want to remind you, as this is the story of your relationship with God personally. This is also a description of a holy marriage, the way that if you're married, a husband and a wife should be towards each other. It's also the way Christ views the church. And so when you look at this, here's a woman who feels like she's not enough. And sometimes, whether it's in our marriage, we feel like we're not enough. If it's in our relationship with God, we feel like we're not enough. In the church, we often still feel like we're not enough. It's a common battle that we all face. And when we're in that place of not feeling like we're enough, we will often turn away from God rather than draw close to Him. In our personal relationships, when we feel like we are not enough, we will still often turn away from our spouse rather than draw close to them. And if there is one major premise throughout the theme of this whole book, it's that the bride constantly shows us that rather than turn away, she is in a continual pursuit of the one that she knows and loves her because he has loved her in such a pure, true way. That's what we had seen, that she actually drew towards him. She wanted him in her life. I want to remind you real quick some of the struggles that she mentioned. We only touched on one of the struggles last time we talked, but this time I want to go over all of them that she mentions here. She tells her friends, the daughters of Jerusalem, the immature people, don't look down upon me. She might even be telling her lover, don't look down upon me. Just the people that she knows around her, please don't look down upon me because, number one, she says she's dark. Now I want to remind you, why would we look down upon somebody because they're dark? Because in those days, that beauty was reflected as women who had fair skin. If you're dark, you're somebody who was probably poor, you're the working class, you were out in the fields, you were working, and the sun made you dark, so you're looked down upon probably because of your social status, because you were a worker, because you were a woman, because you were dark-skinned. But those that could afford to not work, that could be inside and have this white, pure, fair skin, they were considered beautiful. So she didn't feel like she was beautiful enough. And yet, there's so much more to it. She said, my mother's sons were angry with me. What she was really facing was also rejection. When people are angry with you, or you at least perceive that they're angry with you, then you feel like you're being rejected, don't you? And what does that do? That creates a separation between you and the people that you think are looking down upon you, that are rejecting you or are angry with you. And so in your rejection, there's a separation that leads to an isolation that creates a loneliness inside of you. And when you battle with the fear of rejection continually, what it will do to you is create an insecurity inside of you. You battle to feel secure in any sort of relationship because you're constantly really battling the fear of rejection. She says they're my mother's sons. No, she doesn't call them her brothers. You know, the only time that happens typically is if you have kids. You know, when like the girls are acting up, I would say, you need to take care of your daughters. Right? They're her daughters, they're not my daughters right now because of the way that they're acting. And so there's some sort of perception or mentality that is created that creates some sort of rejection. So she was battling rejection. The third thing she says, don't look down upon me because I haven't kept my own vineyard. Like they had vineyards and they were supposed to take care of their vineyards, but her brothers made her the keeper of the vineyards. But she was too busy taking care of their vineyards or everybody else's vineyards that she couldn't take care of her own vineyard. And so there was this spirit of busyness that was taking place inside of her life. And I don't know if it was her just fulfilling her duties, because sometimes there's duties, responsibilities that we have that we need to take care of, and in taking care of is what we perceive to be our duties and our responsibilities in life. We're not really taking the time to take care of our own personal situations that are going on. When it's talking about a field here, spiritually with the church, it's talking about your spiritual life, your spiritual relationship with God. And so she didn't have time to take care of any of that. I don't know if it's because she was too busy fulfilling the duties, or if she was trying to live up to her brother's expectations, her mother's expectations, society's expectations, trying to please people because she had an insecurity and she feared rejection, or if she was just flat lazy and was using it as an excuse. I'm so busy taking care of everything else that I don't have time to take care of my own stuff. And I don't know about you, but I would guess to say that one of these three issues affects everybody in here this morning. At some time in our life, we have all probably struggled with feeling like we are not enough. We have probably all struggled with the fear of rejection. Are they mad at me? Is there some reason I'm feeling that from them? That separation, that loneliness, that insecurity. We have all probably felt that spirit of busyness. And sometimes that busyness, that spirit of busyness is the craziest thing, because you're so busy you're accomplishing nothing, right? What'd you do today? Oh, I was so busy. Well, what'd you actually do? I was so busy. Well, let's talk about what you did. Okay, I wasn't really that busy. But you're probably not lying. You feel like you're busy. There's that spirit of busyness. And whether it's feeling like you're not enough, that fear of rejection, or that spirit of busyness, all of these are issues that can send people into an SOS at any time in life. And so when you think about what that creates inside of you, you have to look at this young couple and ask, how in the world did they navigate these challenges in their relationship? Whether it's in your personal life and your relationship with Christ, or it's in your relationship with the one that you love, hopefully your spouse, you will have to navigate these challenges. How did this couple, who's lifted up as a perfect example for us, navigate these challenges? Now, I pray, whether it's your struggle with Christ, that you will hear from his perspective, or if it's a struggle in relationship, that you will hear in that perspective. God knows what you need to hear this morning. But she goes further. Here's where I'm at in life. Here's what I'm struggling with. And she, instead of separating from her man, she turns and begins to speak to him. Tell me, in verse 7, O you whom I love, where you feed your flock, where you make it rest at noon. For why should I be as one who veils herself by the flocks of your companions? Again, rather than turn away because of her issues, I want to remind you there's a continual pursuit. For the bride, there's a lesson to be learned in this. Because of issues, oftentimes you will turn away from your husband rather than draw close to him. And what this is teaching us is that if he's really offering everything that you need, rather than turn away, you should fight those feelings and continue to draw close. In the same manner in our relationship with Jesus, it's the same thing. We all go through struggles. We all battle the not enough, fear of rejection, and busyness. But rather than turn away, there has to be this continual pursuit. She chooses to move towards her lover. She wants to know how to get to him. When I say that she wants to know how to get to him, listen, if you've ever been in a relationship, you will understand this. You could be next to the person that you love and loves you and still not feel like you're close to him. You may be married and having captured them, but still not feel like you know how to get to them. Get back into that place that you need to be of oneness where you're meeting each other's needs. This is where she's at. She's like, tell me how to get to you. I don't want to be like a veiled woman. A veil in those days represented usually prostitution or some sort of separation. And so she doesn't want to look like a woman with a reputation trying to bounce around and find her way to him. I don't want to be just like every other woman, just a part of your flock trying to get your attention and come to you. No. Like, can you catch this sense? Out of one side of her mouth, she shows this insecurity. I don't want to look like this to everybody else when they look at our relationship. And yet out of the other side of her mouth, there's almost this boldness. I don't want to look like this. I'm not just some woman looking for a lover to meet her needs right now. I am someone who is looking for my man. She's his woman looking for her man. And so she's determined to pursue him. She wants to spend time with him. And understand, she describes, even if it's the most inconvenient of opportunities, inconvenient of places, inconvenient of circumstances and times. She's like, I will come visit you at work. Just tell me where you're at. Tell me where you're going to be. Do you see the heart of her pursuit in the midst of her challenges and what she's battling? She's willing to go to great lengths and make sacrifices just to be with him in his presence. Tell me where you're at the noon, at the high noon, when the sun is the hottest. It doesn't even matter. I am in pursuit of his presence because in his presence is nourishment and protection. More than likely, if he's a shepherd, he'd have his sheep in a place of shade at high noon. And so she knows that if she finds him in that place at that time, that there will also be a place of rest. She's desperate for him, and when in distress, this is the pursuit of a woman looking for her man who knows that her man can provide what she needs. That's the flip side of this. If you want your woman to pursue you like that, she has to be able to know that you can provide what she needs. The second part of this is, this should be the pursuit of a new believer, somebody who's coming to Christ. We just don't go anywhere. We just don't gather, together with any sort of people. But it says, do not forsake the gathering of yourselves together. But it better be a place that feeds you. And so as the bride representing the church in these scriptures, she's saying, where do you feed your flock? Where is it that you're feeding your flock? I don't want to waste my time bouncing around and looking like somebody who's just hopping from one place to another and trying out 300 different churches around the Pacific Northwest. God, where is it that you're feeding your flock? Because that's where I want to be. I'm desperate for you in my life. It's also the pursuit of a mature believer. we should continue to pursue. And if there's one thing I want you to get from this today, it's that idea that there needs to be a continual pursuit in relationships. Everyone say continual pursuit. Because here's the mistake. If you remember when we started this series, I described these three aspects that you'll see throughout this entire series. That is, in every relationship, especially the beginning of relationships, you see it the easiest. But what begins a relationship is always desire and attraction. You're not going to pursue somebody if you're not attracted to them, if you don't desire them. You'll never attain them, though, if you don't go beyond desire and attraction and begin to pursue them, right? So there has to be pursuit if you want them in your life. But once you start the pursuit isn't good enough. You're not going to stop there. If you really want them in your life, you have a goal. The goal is to be able to touch them. There's got to be real touch. There's got to be real emotion. There's got to be real connection. Your goal is to actually capture them. There's all three aspects. The mistake that we will often make in relationship with God and relationship with the lovers of our soul, our spouses or even friendships, is that, yes, you once had that desire and that attraction, and you began the pursuit, but when you get to that place where you've captured them, she's either engaged to him in this song or she's already married to him. We're not sure, depending on interpretation, how you want to take it. She's already captured him. Notice she's still pursuing him, though. Oftentimes, we will quit the pursuit once we've attained or captured someone in our lives. We quit doing the things that we once did in order to attain them in our lives. I know when I was attracted to Stacy, in my pursuit, I began to communicate with her. I began to say nice things to her. I would bring her flowers. I would do things for her. There was this pursuit that takes place. But once she becomes my wife, does that mean I quit the pursuit? We would say no, but what usually happens? In relationships, you quit pursuing each other. You quit doing those things that once helped you attain that person. And you think, well, I already have them attained. I'm already married. You know that I love you. You got the ring on your finger. Why do we need to go through all of this stuff all over again? And so what happens if you're not careful is that you go through the ups and downs of life and the trials and the tribulations. You don't even realize it, but it's beginning to create a distance. And though you may be sitting next to the person that you love and loves you, like I said earlier, you don't know what to do to get to each other anymore because you've stopped the pursuit. And the same thing happens in our relationship with God. Yes, I've received Christ into my life. Now, is that it? I've captured him. I don't have to go any further. I've done what it takes to become a, quote, Christian or a believer of God. Now I go through trials and tribulations, and if I haven't continued the pursuit, then what happens is those trials and tribulations eventually begin to create separation between me and God, and I quit doing the things that I once did in the pursuit of attaining him into my life, and before I know it, he's there, but he's not there. And so she's describing this continual pursuit that should be taking place in life. And that's for all of us. Heck, even as a pastor, do you know that there's times where I need to pursue the presence of God? Like, I'm not just settled with reading his word. I'm not just settled with praying or singing a song. Like, what I want from God is his touch. Pursuit is one thing. Attraction is another thing. But what I'm looking for is the real living God. I want his touch in my life. I want to literally feel his presence in my life. There is something more to entering into the Holy of Holies, in this place of intimacy with God. And there's times that I find that very easily, and there's times where it's more difficult. And where I may have found it one day, it may not be there the next day. There's some days that I jump in the shower and bam, there's the presence of God. I know that sounds weird, but I could step in there and I can just begin to sing a song while I'm in the shower and I'm praising the Lord, and the presence of God is literally with me. I can't even there's other days I jump in the shower and what's Corey doing? He's just washing his bald head and his gray hairs, and he's doing what he needs to do to go on to the next step of the day. And I know that God's with me, but I may be with him, but I'm not with him. I don't have that. I don't sense his presence as being next to me. But I'll leave there and I may go to the church and I start reading the Bible while I'm at the church. And I might find it in the Bible. I'm reading his word. I might find it in song and singing a song. I might find it at church. But then there's times where, you know what, I just got so much going on in life. I have to pull away and take a drive up the river. Like, I need a touch from God right now. And I'm desperate and I'll do whatever it takes because I know that I need your presence, that rest, everything that I can get from you in those moments, Lord. So I'll go up the river and just begin to pray. And sometimes I go up the river and I begin to pray while I'm up there, and that's where I'll find the presence of the Lord in a greater way. And I think that God actually sometimes desires that we would continue the pursuit of him because he doesn't want us to become complacent with routine. He doesn't want us to become complacent with the disciplines. Not that we quit the routine or the disciplines, but don't think just because it worked one way one day that it's going to work the same way every day. Like, I may wake up... Sorry, I have thoughts go through my head. I don't know how to really get this across, but maybe it already is. But there's some days where I can wake up, turn over, kiss my wife and tell her I love her, and there's intimacy. But I cannot expect that just because that would become routine, that it's going to be that intimacy every single time. Sometimes there's more than just the routine that needs to take place in order to find that intimacy. God doesn't want us to get into routine. It's not about being religious. He doesn't want you to just read the word so that you can check it off your list. He wants you to read the word so that you can find him in his word. He doesn't want you to pray just so you can say the Lord's Prayer 10 times and check that off your list. He wants you to pray so that you're communicating with the living God personally. There's so much more to it than that. And so let's look at his response to her need. She's fully expressed herself. That's another clue for wives today. Instead of turning away, she turned towards and she fully expressed her need. And so he responds for the first time. In verse 8. Notice, it took 7 verses for him to respond with 3. That's typical, right, between men and women. And he says to her, if you do not know, O fairest among women, say fairest. Follow in the footsteps of the flock and feed your little goats beside the shepherd's tents. I have compared you, my love, to my filly among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with chains of gold. I don't know if you listen to that, but here's a wife who just turned. I'm in desperate need right now. Here's what's going on in my life. Here's how I feel. And he begins this, your cheeks are lovely, your neck with chains of gold. Like the power of words, right? I wish I had words like Solomon. I joke and I'd say to my wife, roses are red, violets are blue, baby. Man, you are the glue to our zoo. You know, and her heart just melts. Right? It's silly words. And we can laugh at the silliness, but words are way more important than we will give them credit for, right? Something that I continually battle with in life. You know, that generalizing, it seems like at times I'm either short and to the point, which makes people think that I'm grumpy, and I'm not. But then they say that I'm grumpy, then it makes me grumpy. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Right? Or I can be very sarcastic, for the sake of trying to be funny. And then people don't take me as being funny because they don't know if I'm being sarcastic or not. And neither one often serves me very well. And it's interesting because that's my way of communicating, and though I think that it works oftentimes better in public than it does at home, my wife reminded me this week, how come you can say all these nice things in public, but when you're at home, and then I have to study this sermon, I'm like, oh, why she got to be like the Holy Spirit in my life, man? I don't know. Right? What's she telling me? I'm not hearing what I need to hear at times. Because there's power to our words. If you've ever studied the 5 love languages, and if you haven't, you should. Written by Gary Chapman, words are part of the 5 love languages. One of the 5 love languages, and yet I think it's probably one of the most easily dismissed of the love languages. You may not think so, but I want you to think about the first time, if you've ever been in love, that you fell in love with somebody. Couples, usually in the very beginning, are very good about saying nice things to each other. Right? The first time you start talking to somebody, you're like, oh, you're so nice. Oh, that's so sweet of you. Oh, man. And then you know that moves on as feelings begin to grow. You are so beautiful. Man, I just love your eyes. And you say all these nice things that you start to goo-goo and gaga over each other. And as she begins to gaga over him, he begins to goo-goo over her. And then the goo-gooing and the gagaing becomes goggling and Google eyes. And all this stuff starts happening because it starts to stir each other up. And pretty soon, you know, you've got the rosy-colored glasses because you've done so much goo-gooing and gagaing together, right? But what happens once you've captured is what you did in the pursuit stops, the goo-gooing and the gagaing. And the nice things that you used to say to each other, you don't say as frequently or at all. Those words begin to change. And in fact, instead of goo-gooing and gagaing, they can become hurtful and damaging. And so it flips. And it creates divide within our relationship instead of unity. And we don't understand the power of words within relationship. And the Bible is very clear when it comes to the power of words. Proverbs 18:21, most everybody's heard it. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. That means that in your relationships, you have the ability to create death and continue to kill something with your words. Or you have the ability to create life. When it looks like something's dead, you continue to speak the right things and bring that thing back to life. It goes on to say, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So if you're in a relationship and you don't like what you're eating in that relationship, then quite possibly you need to change your words. And yet this isn't really about marriage. This is about our relationship with God and being able to understand His word towards us and what He wants to create inside of us. Life. There's some things that He speaks that is meant to put things to death in us. There's other things He speaks that is meant to bring things to life in us. Ephesians 5:25 through 26, which is kind of a setup scripture for this whole series, takes us to this allegory of Christ in the church and husbands and wives. And Paul writes to the church, husbands, loves your wives as Christ also loved the church and gave Himself for her, verse 26. Why? That He might sanctify and cleanse her, set her apart and cleanse her, set her apart from the rest of the women in the world, and cleanse her with the washing of the water by the word. Knowing your words as a husband can set her apart and make such a difference in her life that she stands out amongst all of the other women. That's what God's word does for us. If we will receive His word into our life, it's meant to set us apart and cleanse us and make us stand out amongst all of the other people in the world. Your words can make a world of difference. And so what Solomon is saying here in these verses 8 and 9 and 10 are not just superficial, silly, or sarcastic words. They're actually cleansing, uplifting, and intentional. And in fact, the words that he speaks that we thought were just poetic are actually meeting all three of the needs that she described to him that she had. Number one, she says, don't look down upon me because I'm dark. I don't think I'm beautiful. I don't think that I'm enough. And what is the first thing that he says to her? Oh, fairest of all women. But I'm dark. I'm not fair like all the other women. Not light-skinned like all the other women. It's like, you know what? The world may see you as dark, baby. But in my eyes, you're more fair than every woman out there. He's meeting that place of, I don't feel like I'm enough because of how I look, because of what I'm feeling right now. And he immediately responds to that need. You're fair. Man, you are beautiful amongst all the women. You're not dark. You don't feel like you're enough as a Christian. You've got some sin issues in life, and God is looking at you that says, it is my death on the cross that gives you righteousness. You know what? You may have sin like everybody else in the world has sin. But when I look down upon you because of my blood shed for you on the cross of Calvary, I see you as more beautiful than everybody else in the world. That's my heart for you. And then he goes on from there and he says, addresses the second one, rejection. When she feels that rejection, don't look down upon me because I feel rejected from my friends, from the daughters of Jerusalem, the immature, maybe from him, you start to battle that rejection, that spirit of rejection, and guess what happens? You start feeling rejected by everybody, right? It may have started with one person, but then it leads to the next person, Like it started with somebody in the store that looked at you the wrong way, and you think, oh, why are they upset with me? And then you go, down the road, and you see somebody, and they don't wave at you, and like, oh, now everyone's mad at me. And you go home, and you pick a fight with your spouse because, everyone else in the world is mad at you. So there's this rejection, right, that's going on. And what does he say to her? I want you to understand something, babe. You're the fairest among all women. When I look out upon everybody else, when it comes to mano y mano, me and you, babe, you're better than every woman out there. He's connecting with her. Don't feel rejected. Don't feel separation. Don't feel loneliness. Don't allow that spirit to come in between us. You are better than everybody else out there. Don't feel rejected. In fact, when I look at you as a filly among Pharaoh's chariots. What's he saying? I better describe it for you. Because I don't want any husbands going home and saying their wife is a horse. Right? You go, babe, you are such a horse. And she'll put you in the doghouse. Right. But in those days, it was a thing of beauty to compare a woman to a horse. And in fact, what he's actually describing, if we believe that this is Solomon that wrote this letter, is that in those days, Pharaoh was known for, actually years and years and years to have the best horses, the most beautiful horses. And Solomon was somebody who absolutely loved horses. You can see in 1 Kings how he describes his love for horses and chariots. And so kings all around the world would pay a lot of money to bring in those expensive, beautiful horses into their land. And so there was this great beauty being represented amongst horses. But it wasn't even the horses that were being brought in, because the chariots weren't led by fillies. The chariots were more than likely led by stallions. Right? So what's he really saying? What he's saying is that it would be like a filly being set free amongst the stallions of Pharaoh's chariots. And what would the filly do to the stallions? In fact, when I was studying, I came across something that said, back in those days of wars, where there were troops and there were horses, that when there was one side of the army that had a lot of horses, they would often send a filly, or more than one, running through the fields to try and distract the stallions of the enemy's armies to chase after the fillies. So what he's really saying to her is, I want you to understand something. You are the most beautiful amongst all women, and your beauty drives me crazy. How many wives want to hear that? So what is he doing? He's meeting that place of insecurity in her life. Don't feel insecure. Don't feel lonely. Don't feel separated. Listen, man, your beauty drives me crazy. And then he addresses the third issue that she brought up, the busyness. The busyness. Feed your little goats, he says to her. Your little goats. Not your brother's little goats, not your mama's little goats, not your neighbor's little goats. But feed your little goats. Take time for your goats. Take time for your field. Take time for what you are personally responsible for. Take time for yourself. Because if you have too much on your plate, then you have too much. Quit worrying about everybody else. You need to be able to take care of what relationship you have, what responsibilities you have. And do you know his response to her? I know that you're busy. I know that you feel this burden, that you're out there running around trying to please everybody else. But I want you to come to me. And with me, you can take care of your responsibilities, your little goats. It was a reflection, that is a reflection of what Christ would later say. When in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, and he looks out amongst all these people who were his followers, following after him. Come to me, he says, all you who labor and are heavy laden. That means you feel like you carry these big burdens in life. You've got this great workload. There's this constant stress upon you. He says, I want all of you, if you will just come to me, to know that I will give you rest. Now listen, when you read through this, and I know some Christians would take it this way, this doesn't mean that you sit around and do nothing all day. That's called laziness. And this isn't about self-care. I just need to take care of me. I'm so busy taking care of the kids, taking care of the family. I'm so busy taking care of my parents or my brothers and sisters. I'm so busy taking care of my workplace or my neighbors. I got all these things going on. I just need some me time. I would just get better if I could just take care of me. And that's a new world. That's like a worldly, new age type mentality about the me aspect. And that's not at all what he's describing here. In fact, it's just the opposite. What he's allowing her is that in her rest, she still has the ability to be able to take time for her own responsibilities in life. Feed your goats. There's still a responsibility there. Come to me, and I will give you what you need. Because we know this, that when it comes to busyness often leads to your isolation, right? You're here, you're there, you're everywhere, but you're with no one intentionally. And so that means you're so busy doing everything out there, and you might run into like 50 million different people, but you're with no one in a deep way. You're with no one in a way that's going to help nurture your soul. You're with no one in a way that's going to create intimate relationship. And in those moments, especially with God. What does Jesus say to that in verse 29? He says, you know what, take my yoke upon you. Notice there's still a yoke involved. Don't just come beside me and freely follow me and hope that you're going to stay next to me. No, take my yoke upon you. There's still going to be a weight upon you. There's still a responsibility. You didn't stop walking and laying on the couch now watching TV. You're still walking with him. Where he walks, you walk. What he does, you do. And so what he's saying is that you come to me. I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. But there's still a yoke, and there's still a burden. Come to Jesus and you'll find rest, not because you won't be doing anything, but because now you are yoked to a partner, to somebody who's doing life with you. In this relationship, whether it's Solomon to his beloved, Christ to you, or you to your spouse, what's really being said here is that you're going together with somebody who will help teach you in life. Somebody who will help guide you in life. Somebody who shares in your work. Somebody who will go through the hard times, the easy times, that will walk the road of life together with you. This is what it means to be equally yoked together. That's why Paul would say to single people in the scriptures, when it comes to marrying somebody, do not be unequally yoked. If you're going to yoke yourself together in relationship, in marriage, find somebody that you can be as equally yoked as possible with. What does lightness have to do with darkness? Like, you don't join together with a non-believer. There's certain things that he lays out there to help you become equally yoked in relationship. His demonstration of love and care is so good when they're yoked together that it actually teaches others how to treat his bride. This is the crazy part. This is the blessing when you really capture this thought, this idea. Here's what he responds to her in these ways. He meets all of her needs. In fact, he pours it on so well that the daughters of Jerusalem, the friends that are hanging out in the back, he's like, you know what? I see the jewelry that's on you, that's on your cheeks, and the golden necklace. Like you are my queen. That's what that jewelry would represent. You're my queen. I love you that much. That the daughters of Jerusalem would look and say, you know what? In verse 11, we'll make you ornaments of gold with studs of silver. Like, what's that? What's the point here? They see how well he treats his bride, the things that he does her, and they're so caught up in that love relationship, that connection, that yoke, that oneness, that they're like, we want to become a part of that. You guys are so blessed, we want to be a part of the blessing. And I want to say this, that when it comes to your relationship, husbands, the way that you treat your wives will teach your kids how to treat their mom. That's one aspect of this. If you bless her and treat her well, they want to be a part of that blessing. It will also teach your sons how to treat their future wives. The way that you treat your bride affects how others treat your bride. How does this play out spiritually with the church, Christ in the church, you and Jesus? He's treated you so well that if you will allow his blessings to be visible to the world around you, it's this weird thing that takes place, but people will see that blessing upon your life, and they will draw near to you and often even bless you because of the blessings they see God creating in your life. I'm not quite sure how to explain this, but all I can tell you is that from personal experience, this is in no way lifting myself, my wife, our family up at all, but everything that we are, everything that we have is only because of God's blessing in our lives. Amen. And because of the life that we live, though not perfect, there's people that have seen how God has blessed us. And it's the craziest thing. But we've had people that are in the world do things for us, give things to us, because they see us as being like special, or there's something different about us. There's something special about you guys. And for whatever reason, they want to bless us because of the blessings that we already have in life. That's like double blessing, right? And I can't describe it, but what I'm saying to you is that I believe that though living openly for Christ can bring persecution, it can also bring great blessing into your life. And that if you will openly live for the Lord, reflecting His goodness, that's half the battle for most Christians, because they're not reflecting His goodness in their day-to-day life. They're out there busy whining, complaining, and moaning and groaning about all the bad things that happen to them. Nobody wants to be a part of that. But if you will reflect His goodness and His blessings in your life, people will want to become a part of your life and bless you because they want that same thing in their own lives. God will do that for you. And so they respond. They want to jump in on the blessings. He's just stirred things up so much with her by meeting her needs and saying all these nice things. They're wanting to jump in. Now the Shulamite, who's got this place that she's coming from where she feels separated, lonely, and like she's not enough, what did it do to her? What's her response? Verse 12. She says, while the king is at his table. Mind you, he just described her as the necklace around her neck and those things on her face that is basically saying, you're royalty to me. You're the queen of my castle. Now she responds to him, oh, you're the king. And while the king is at his table, my spikenard, which is my perfume, sends forth its fragrance. There's like this attraction that's all of a sudden stirred up. Instead of being lost, lonely, down, separated, I need you. I'm so desperate. Where are you at right now? I'll do whatever it takes to come to you. He's spoken to her. He's stirred up things inside of her. She's like, oh, let this flow forth. A bundle of myrrh is my beloved to me that lies all night between my breasts. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blooms in the vineyards of En-Gedi. All of a sudden, she goes from, oh, this is the way my life is, to she becomes poetic. Right? His words have so captured her heart that now it's stirred up love inside of her that she begins to speak words back. Where once the goo goo gaga was gone, the goo goo gaga is coming back in the relationship, right? And so now the power of words is beginning to stir up love towards each other. And so she throws out all these descriptions of spikenard and myrrh and henna blooms and all these things. Well, real quick, I just want to tell you what these are, and then we're going to close. Spikenard was a perfume that was very, very expensive. The average working person could not afford it. It was imported from India. And if anything, she had it because it was either a gift from the king to her, or she would have saved up her wages that would have been like a year's worth of wages in order to buy this bottle of perfume. Now, I don't know what you make a year. Even if you make minimum wage, can you imagine buying a bottle of perfume for somebody that you love, just so you can put it on for somebody that you love? Because you know that you want to please their heart so much because they please yours so much that you would spend $10,000 on a bottle of perfume. Whatever it might be, whatever a minimum wage might be, $12,000, $15,000 on a bottle of perfume. Like, that is great sacrifice for the sake of having something that you know will stir the heart of the one that loves you. And any time that you look throughout the New Testament, you will often see this fragrance or aroma is connected to sacrifice. Even in the New Testament, it says that our sacrifices are a pleasing aroma to God, and they should be a pleasing aroma to others that are around us. The things that we do, the sacrifices we make in life, should be pleasing to those that we love and to God Himself. And listen, when you make those sacrifices, here's the difference. I believe that as she would go out and buy this spikenard to be able to put it on for the lover of her soul, that it wasn't really a sacrifice for her. She was looking forward to it. Because it's no longer when you're in love with somebody, your actions aren't striving. It's not about doing things out of fear of rejection, but rather because we are stirred by love. I want to sacrifice. I'm willing to pay the price, to do what it takes to pursue a deeper relationship with you. And then she describes him as a bundle of myrrh that lies at night between her breasts. Now in this description, it's an oil that could be used for purification. You see this in the book of Esther. It cleanses her. It could be used for healing. There's a healing aspect to it. There's an anointing aspect to it. It was used for embalming. So there's a lot of different things here that she's describing, like my lover means this to me. Even if he's not with me at night, I have him right here. He's a bundle of myrrh. And when she says between her breasts, it's like there's this closeness. There's this comfort. There's this intimacy. In that place of one time being insecure, it brings me security to know that the lover of my soul, the one that cleanses me, the one that heals me, the one that empowers me, the one that makes sweet sacrifices for me is always here with me. He's the one that brings me security. And then she goes on to describe him like the henna blooms of En-Gedi. And En-Gedi, we were there a year ago in Israel, is an oasis in the middle of desert land in Israel. It's a place where you would go to find rest, comfort, peace, protection. And in reality, what she is saying is that he is everything she needs to be made to feel whole all over again. She's going from this is how I felt to now he's stirred me with my words, and my words have begun to stir him. And now I feel like he's making me whole again. And so he responds back to her after what she just said to him. And he says, behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes. And all of these mean something we don't have time for this morning. She responds back to him. Behold, you are handsome, my beloved. You pleasant. And our bed is green. And the beams of our house are cedar. And our rafters are of fir. And describes the blessings all around them. It goes from being blessed in relationship to all of a sudden she sees the blessings all around her. You know what? At one time, I felt like I wasn't enough. At one time, I felt like I was rejected. I was feeling lonely, and I was feeling insecure. At one time, I was feeling like there was nobody that was for me. But he began to speak his word to me and tell me how beautiful I am, how much I mean to him, how lovely I am in his eyes. And all of a sudden, he has made me feel whole once again. And I not only see the blessings in my relationship with him, but as we began to goo-goo and gaga over each other once again, I now see all the blessings around me. Man, my life is good now. It all started with the continual pursuit instead of a turning away in the midst of her trials and her sorrows. But it was completed with the power of his words. That is not only love at its greatest in a healthy marriage. That is God's love for you. You listen just to a few of his words, closing with these few scriptures. Genesis 1:31, God creates the heavens and the earth. He does all of these things, and I'm going to read it from the Voice so you hear it in a different way. It says he created all these things, and he looks around at everything. You know what else he created beyond just the heavens and the earth? He created man. He created you. And he looks at all of this, and it says he was savoring its beauty and appreciating its goodness. He looks at you, and he savors your beauty, and he appreciates your goodness. In Ecclesiastes 3:11, he says, I know God has made everything beautiful for its time. He's made everything. That includes you. He's made you beautiful. Matthew 10:29-31 says, look, man, if you sold a few sparrows, how much money would you get? A copper coin apiece, perhaps? And yet your Father in heaven knows when those small sparrows fall to the ground. 30 and 31, you beloved, you, the one that I love, you are worth so much more than a flock of sparrows. God knows everything about you, even the number of hairs on your head. Do not fear. Psalm 139:14, the psalmist says, and what I'll offer you, God, my grateful heart. I have come to understand I am your unique creation. You are his unique creation. This is about you. I'm filled with awe and wonder. You have approached even the smallest details with excellence. The smallest details about you, God has approached with excellence. He says, your works are wonderful. When God looks at you, he says, you are wonderful. Ephesians 2:10 out of the New Living says, for you are God's masterpiece. His masterpiece. When you take the time to hear what the lover of your soul, Jesus Christ, thinks about you, if you will listen to his words toward you, you will understand you are his beloved. Your beauty drives him crazy. You are royalty to him. You are worth the sacrifice. And he can't wait to spend eternity with you. Let his love for you stir you up. Let his love for you stir you up and draw close to him.